So welcome. Um, Terry White here, Worldwide Design Evangelist for Adobe, and it's my pleasure to walk you through what's new in Creative Cloud, specifically for designers. I've put up this first slide here just for those of you who are new or first time seeing me present. A lot of what's being covered today, and a lot of, more importantly, what I won't get a chance to cover today has been recorded in one way or another. So I'm just going to point you to the link down at the bottom for the videos. So you can check out my YouTube channel. You can check out Adobe TV, which is tv.adobe.com. And more than likely, whatever I don't get a chance to talk about today has already been recorded by one of my colleagues or myself. All right, so with that, let's jump in. I'm going to just walk you through a couple of slides very quickly because I want to get to the demo content and talk about what's new with Creative Cloud. But normally I would just really start with the demo content, but there's so many changes and so many things happening with Creative Cloud that I think it's important for you to get kind of a more visual overview than me just talking about the apps and features. Now, as you know, Adobe has had a strong history and tradition of providing the world-class desktop tools that we all know and love. But the world is changing. Apps and services are not enough anymore. People are creating everywhere on everything and every kind of device. So it's more than just about, the apps running on your desktop as Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign have traditionally done. It's also about creating content on mobile devices and creating content for mobile devices. We have print designers that are no longer able to just focus on just print. They have to think about, well, is this going to a tablet as well? We have web designers that no longer can focus on just creating a website. They have to also think about, well, do I need a web app? So everyone is being asked to do things a little bit more and over and above what they have traditionally done. And therefore, as the world changes, so must the apps and services that we use to create. Now, with that, Adobe actually launched Creative Cloud a year ago. It's been a year already. We launched in May 2012, and of course, it included all of the Creative Suite 6 applications. It included the brand new Acrobat 10 at the time, the brand new Muse 1.0, a preview to Edge Animate, Business Catalyst hosting, and we had just acquired Typekit. But the promise and the vision for Creative Cloud is that because this was a monthly membership or a membership community, we wouldn't be static. We wouldn't wait 12, 18, 24 months to release something new. So from June to October, you saw things like Lightroom being added. You saw brand new Muse features, Illustrator features. You saw Digital Publishing Suite single edition just automatically be turned on in September for all Creative Cloud members to be able to create an unlimited number of iPad applications. New Dreamweaver features, Edge tools and services, and Acrobat 11 came out during that time frame. So again, rather than members having to pay an upgrade fee just to get Acrobat, they just automatically got the ability to download it and install it on their desktop as usual. And of course, in December, that was our big update. New Photoshop features, Retina support, new features in the application itself, more Muse features, being able to create mobile designs and mobile layouts. For our developers, we introduced a whole bunch of gaming developer tools. And we also introduced different tiers of Creative Cloud, the ones that people were asking for Teams and Enterprise. And this was also the first time that we introduced our desktop sync preview, which is the Creative Cloud app, as we'll refer to it from here on out. And we turned on the Learning Center because Creative Cloud includes training. So people got the ability to go to their training section in Creative Cloud. Then, didn't stop there. January to April, more new features in many of the applications, plus the integration with Behance. And then the big day came May 6th, where we introduced 15 new Creative Cloud desktop apps with hundreds of new features across all of them. The ability to sync your fonts, colors, and settings, publishing directly to Behance from your desktop apps, folder sharing and file versioning. That's the one that I got hit with last time I believe I talked with you guys. People want to know, well, not only can I share a file, but can I share a folder? Can I have versionings of the files? And yes, you can do that now, or you will be able to do that very soon. And of course, all tightly integrated through Creative Cloud. So the apps are no longer just the story about Adobe. Of course, we have all brand new apps. These apps still continue to be downloaded and installed on your desktop as they traditionally have done. So you're not running them in the cloud, you're not running them in a browser, you're running them on your desktop. And of course, the new branding for Creative Cloud instead of Creative Suite. But like I said, it's more than just the apps. The apps are a major part of it, but it's also about assets, settings, colors, and fonts, and the ability to sync them with the cloud across multiple computers and multiple devices. Collaboration, as I talked about, the ability to share folders and get versioning and comments back, even if the people that you're sharing this with aren't Creative Cloud members. And of course, the community with Behance. And I know a lot of people that participate in Behance from a creative standpoint, but now with ProSite being included in Creative Cloud, people that wanted to have a portfolio website will now just be able to create one without having to, again, pay separately, which that was normally $100 a year just for ProSite. And of course, publishing your work out to mobile devices and desktops with our hosting. So it's, again, way beyond just the apps that people focus on or concentrate on. It's a bunch of services and fonts and settings and colors and syncing and portfolios. And that's the cloud part of it that so many people miss. So with that, let's talk about a few myths and we'll get right into the demo. So I just want to reemphasize that the apps traditionally, as always, install on your desktop. They do not run in a browser. You don't have to be constantly connected to the internet. Of course, you have to be connected to the internet long enough to download the apps, but once you download and install them, then you can be offline. And of course, that offline period continues to evolve. At first, it was 30 days that you'd have to be off. You could be offline before your computer would need to check in to validate your monthly membership. Now, with an annual commitment, it can be up to 99 days. I don't know anyone who's offline for 3 months at a time, but if that's you, you can now be offline for 3 months. If you want to share files with Creative Cloud or want to share files from Creative Cloud with people that are not part of Creative Cloud, I'm going to show you how to do that. And of course, updates, as we've talked about from last May to now, tons of new feature updates. But again, you as the user get to install those updates when you're ready, not in the middle of a project, not when your IT department doesn't want them installed. You install them when you're ready, just like we have traditionally done. So if a new version of Photoshop comes out and you say, wow, those features are great, but I can't stop what I'm doing right now, then you install that update when you're ready to. And this is one that's come up recently, is that people focus in on one thing. They focus in on the price of Creative Cloud, which includes everything. But for people that only need one app, there are a lot of people out there, so for example, photographers that just need Photoshop. You can subscribe to any one app individually for a lot less money. And now let's get to the demo. So let's talk about some of the things I mentioned earlier, starting with Creative Cloud. Now, I know there was a link to the FAQ, I believe, put in the chat pod. For those of you who missed that or don't get it, you can always go to adobe.com/Creative Cloud. And when you get to this page, there's an FAQ link. And when you go to the FAQ, that's where all the top questions are asked and answered. So if I missed something or you still have a question, you can probably still get it from the FAQ. All right, so with that, let's head over to creative.adobe.com. So creative.adobe.com is where you will go once you sign up or once you become a Creative Cloud member. And this is your web hub to get to everything that you've shared, you've created, apps you want to download, or of course the Learning Center. Now, these are my files and folders. These are only the files and folders that I chose to put in Creative Cloud. I don't have to put any files in there. It's totally up to me. So just like Dropbox, where you have a folder on your desktop, if you put something in a Dropbox folder, it's on Dropbox. It's also still on your hard drive. If I put something in my Creative Clouds folder, it's on my hard drive and it's also in the Creative Cloud. So it's up to me. Now, I wanted to mention earlier, or I mentioned earlier about the new collaboration feature. So now on a folder, for example, if I go to my Max folder here, you have the ability, here, let's click on it. You have the ability to go in and you can, well, actually, let's go back one step. I want to go back out. I want to actually go to a different folder. I've got some files here. Let's go here and let's go here. So I've got a couple of files here. I've got a folder and I've also got a Photoshop image. And when I click on this Photoshop image, you'll notice that I have the color swatches that were automatically detected in the image. I can download those swatches and install them in other Adobe applications such as Illustrator or InDesign. But more importantly, I also have two other tabs here. I have the Layers tab so that I can, or anyone else viewing this file in their browser, can turn layers on and off just to see what those layers contain or how this file was built. But if I share this file, which I did earlier, I have the ability to send a link to it and to allow comments and to allow downloading if I choose to. I can either put in the email address here and have Creative Cloud send out the email for me, or I can just copy the link, paste it in my own email program with my own text, and send it to as many people as I want. And those people don't have to be on Creative Cloud. They don't have to have an Adobe ID. They don't have to know what Adobe is. They don't have to know what Photoshop is. They get a link to the file, and if you've allowed comments or if you've allowed downloads, they'll be able to interact with you. So if I go to the comments area, I shared this file earlier with Noha, and she left a couple of comments. And again, all Noha did was look at this file in a browser. And of course, she would be able to zoom in on it, turn layers on and off, add comments, and if I let her or allow that to happen, she'd also be able to download the file. So that's sharing, and just want to point out here that if I wanted to post this as a work in progress to Behance, we can now do that directly from the browser. So that's just part of the way of using Creative Cloud to work with your files and folders and to share with colleagues and track comments. And this is also where you will be able to deal with your versioning. So you'll once this site is updated, which we have some updates in progress by June 17th, you'll be able to also see your versions of the file and be able to revert back or see previous versions here as well. Now, with that, there's also the Creative Cloud app. Now, the Creative Cloud Connection Preview, which was the previous version of this app, was again a preview. It's a work in progress. I just would love to show you the new version of this, and this is again coming June 17th. It's not quite ready for prime time just yet, but as you can see, it's going to give me a lot more detail. It's going to give me a home tab that kind of just tracks my activity. Like for example, if I've shared files or projects, or if I've joined projects, I can track who's also joined or commented or done things with them. I'll see any invitations as well to be able to join other people's projects. I'll have the apps, of course, to be able to download any of the apps, including previous versions such as CS6. So even when InDesign CC ships and I install it, 6 months later, someone says, hey, I need you to take a look at something directly in InDesign CS6, I can come back and install CS6 and have them both install simultaneously. So you don't lose access to your previous versions once you go to Creative Cloud. And of course, if you still have CS5 and CS4 and CS3 still installed, we don't touch them as well. You can keep them installed as long as you want. And then of course the files, which we just saw, so I can open the folder, which is on my hard drive, or I can go to creativecloud.com, which is where we already were. But let's go to fonts. This is something that's often overlooked, and it's of course important for designers. Now, we bought a company called Typekit, and Typekit had traditionally been for web fonts. But just as we were acquiring them, they were already in the process of working on desktop fonts. And of course, we're integrating that for our Creative Cloud members. Now, think about this. We often go out and buy fonts, and the fonts can be anywhere from free to 20 bucks to 100 bucks or more, depending on the font family and foundry and so forth and so on. So what we're giving Creative Cloud members with the Typekit fonts is $20,000 worth of font access. Fonts that you'll be able to download, install, and not only use in your Adobe applications, but use in any of your applications. So here are the ones I've downloaded and synced so far. If I want to go look at more, I can say browse the fonts on Typekit. That's just going to take me to this website where I can then go in and I can look by name. If I know a particular name, I can add favorites. I can search by the style of the font to show me all the sans serifs, show me all the serifs, show me the handwritten fonts, whichever fonts I want. Then if I see a little desktop icon next to them, that means that that font is not only available as a web font, but it's also available as a desktop font. So for example, this Banshee Standard, if I click on that, I can see it in more detail. I could also have, on the previous page, by the way, typed in my own text to see it as a sample. And if I kind of, want to use that font, I can say use font, and I can, again, optionally say, yeah, go ahead and sync that to my desktop as well. So now, behind the scenes, that's working with Creative Cloud and syncing that font to my desktop. And when that font does sync, it will be available here, and it will be available on my computer. And like I said, I know they're working on the servers for this particular feature, so that may or may not work in this broadcast. But anyway, if we head over to, and of course I'll show you some of the other fonts that I have synced, but if we head over to Behance, this is where you will not only see your Behance activity, so people that you follow, you'll get to see their work in progress. You'll see what other people are commenting on or saying about it. But you'll also be able to add work. So you can add work directly from here and grab a file and say, hey, I want to add this as a work in progress. And even if the file wasn't created with a current version of the CC apps, you'll still be able to add it. Or if it's just a JPEG or just a PDF, you'll be able to add that as well. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the new Creative Cloud desktop app. And like I said, you will be getting this as part of the June 17th rollout. And again, we showed this in May 6th, kind of showing you a bit of a preview of it here, but let's go ahead and move on. As a matter of fact, let's head over to Photoshop. And in Photoshop, we're going to take a look at Photoshop CC. I'm going to show you some of the new sharpening capabilities and some more things that I think you'll enjoy. So first and foremost, and again, I'm speaking specifically to designers at this point. I know everyone wants their images sharper, but photographers and designers want them as sharp as possible, especially for print. So I have this image here, and it looks okay. I tend to look at the eyes and see how sharp the eyes may be in a particular photo. And again, it looks okay, but I always wonder if I could make it sharper or make it look better. So if I head up to the filter menu, I have the ability to go in under Sharpen, and Smart Sharpen is not new, but the algorithms and technology under Smart Sharpen are new. So if I go to Smart Sharpen, what I get is a much better Sharpen than I did with the previous Smart Sharpen. And again, without me having to do a whole lot to figure out how it works. I can of course go in and adjust it if I know what I'm doing. But the benefit here is that if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to get a better sharpening 9 times out of 10 than I would have gotten with the previous version. So that's the preview off, and we're looking at it over here, and that's the preview. There we go. We'll zoom into that spot. That's the preview on. So let's click OK, and I'll zoom in a little bit further so you can see it. So that image has been sharpened. So that's the before, where the eyes are really getting soft, especially in the pupil there, and that's the after. So you can really see how much of a difference that's going to make in the overall photo. And keep in mind that most times people aren't going to be zooming in on your photo. They're just going to look at it at the printed size. Now, if we head over to this next one, this is not really a sharpening example per se, but it's one that we often run into. How many times has a client asked you, hey, can you print this photo on this layout? And they give you something, they unfold it and get it to you out of their pocket. I mean, in other words, it's something so small that you're going to be like, yeah, we won't be able to print that file. Or they email you something that they copied off the web, or that's their only copy of it, and it just will not be large enough. Well, of course, with image size, you've always been able to go up or down, but we've always cringed when we went up because the image size algorithms just wouldn't keep the image sharp as it made it larger. It would really start to get soft the larger you went. So here I have effectively an 8x10, but only at 72 pixels per inch, which really wouldn't be a good quality image to print at 72 pixels per inch at 8x10. But what I'd really love to see is maybe 300 pixels per inch. So I can go and now put in 300 for the first time and have something that is printable. So that's before what I would have gotten. That's the after. Now, if we look at the resample used to pretty much be by cubic and or nearest neighbor. And now it has an automatic setting by default where it will use the new algorithms based on the image to give you a better quality. So if I click OK and let it rip, here I'll have to zoom back out now. That's my image at 300 pixels per inch. And again, just looking at it at this size, that is more than acceptable for printing this image out that otherwise wouldn't have been printable. Now let's head over to this next image. And as you can see, the color is a little off on this image. It's a little too cool. It needs to be warmed up. And as many years as we've had Photoshop, one of the things that seems to still be missing from Photoshop proper is a white balance tool. I mean, we have ways around it. We can use levels, and we can use curves, and we can use all kinds of things to get the white balance correct. But in Camera Raw, I've got a simple eyedropper. Why can't I have that in Photoshop? So if I wanted to open this up in Camera Raw in the past, I'd have to close this file down, then go either open it in Bridge or do a file open and specifically choose Camera Raw. Well, one of my favorite new features in Photoshop CC is the ability to use Camera Raw as a filter. And before I do that, I want to do it non-destructively. So I'm going to say convert for smart filters. So now that basically made this into a smart object. We'll go ahead and do Camera Raw as a filter. That will bring up the Camera Raw interface without me having to close the image down first. I can either use an eyedropper if I see something I think might be neutral, or I can just use the temperature slider and adjust to my heart's content, just warming that image up a lot more than what it was. So that looks a little bit more natural than what we had. So if we click OK, that's been applied as a smart filter. I can always double click to get right back to my Camera Raw settings if I want to do more, like noise reduction or other adjustments. For example, I can use the new adjustment brush here, and we'll make that smaller. And I can say, yeah, I missed a spot there. I want to kind of make that adjustment on that spot and kind of get that just right. So I'll click OK, and that's been applied. And again, this is the before with the spot, with the blue, without the spot, with the right color, right temperature. So it's a smart object, and therefore I can always get back to it, edit it, turn it off, delete it, or go back to it. Next, designers. Rectangles with rounded corners. How often have we needed to do that? So let's go to our shape tool. And of course, we have a rectangle tool and we have a rounded rectangle tool. And Photoshop's had this tool for a while, but the problem's been if you made a rounded rectangle and you changed your mind about how round the corners would be, you'd have to then delete it and do it over again. Well, now let's go ahead and drag out our rounded rectangle. And of course, that fills it with black by default. I'm just going to say that it has no fill and that it has a black stroke. And there's the properties panel, which now lets me dictate how round those corners will be. I can either type in the pixels, or I can just use my scrubby sliders to round those corners off. And again, if I now deselect, go away, come back, save it, come back tomorrow, and then decide, hey, that corner on the bottom right shouldn't be round at all, I can now unlock this and just straighten out that one corner so that I end up with that corner not being rounded and the other corners being rounded or rounder or whatever setting I want. So not only the ability to have rounded corners, but the ability to re-edit them is going to be a designer's dream in Photoshop going forward. All right, last but not least in Photoshop, again, there's a lot more I could show, but we're trying to keep this for designers, and this is a common problem for photographers, designers, and anyone that has ever held a camera, and that is you shook the camera. The camera was too big, the lens was too long, you couldn't hold it steady enough, you were moving, something happened, but you shook the camera. Even if it were on a tripod and it got bumped with a long exposure, the camera shook and therefore made this image out of focus. Now, I want to just reemphasize that it's the camera shake we're concerned about right now, not the actual object moving. So if you're trying to photograph a kid and that kid's running across the room, that's not going to work for this feature. That's the kid moving, not the camera. But in this case, if we go up to our filter menu, we come down to Sharpen, we have our brand new shake reduction. And without me doing anything, shake reduction analyzes the photo, looks for camera shake, shows me which direction the camera shook in, so it kind of like just shook around in a circle there. And as you can see, here's the before and here's the after. Sharpening that image, basically giving me an image that would have been unusable otherwise. Before, after. So camera shake reduction, huge improvement in Photoshop CC. And now we're going to head over to Illustrator CC. And let's head over to this first image that I want to work with. And this first one is text. It says cliffs. We grab our type tool, and actually if we go to the right layer, let's go to that layer, we can go ahead and select this type because that's been typed as one word. So we could change the font, we could change the color, we could change the stroke, we can change all the things that we typically change with text. But if you wanted to move the letters around individually, that would mean breaking that text up into individual text frames. It would no longer be the word cliffs, it would be a C and an L and an I and two F's and an S in separate frames in order so that you can move them around. Well, now in Illustrator CC, we have the brand new Touch Type tool. And what the Touch Type tool allows me to do is still keep this as one word, cliffs, but go to any individual letter, click on it, and have handles that each handle controls different things. So the first handle lets me, or top handle lets me rotate. So I can rotate the I here without affecting or having to break this up into individual characters. This next one allows me to scale up and down, make it really small, make it big, whatever I want. The one on the left-hand side is just, up or down. So it's stretching it basically. It's making it shorter or making it taller, but not scaling. The bottom right one allows me to go that way with it or make it skinnier. So just like the upper left one does height, the bottom right one does width. And of course, the last one, or bottom left, is my adjustment for things like kerning and tracking. If I wanted that I closer to the L, I can just pick it up and move it. So this is going to be huge for our designers out there that work with text in Illustrator, being able to make their designs come to life, and again, still keeping this as an individual word. So I can still select it and make global changes to everything else that I want to change, but still make changes to this. And for example, if I wanted this to be a B and this to be a U and make it bluffs now, I can. So all one word, the new Touch Type tool. Okay, let's move on. And let's take a look at Illustrator CC. We're going to work on two things here. First, or actually three things. First, I want to deal with color. And I've got my iPhone open here, and I'm just going to go ahead and launch the brand new Cooler app. So once I launch the app, I kind of have, the same kind of deal here. I can go in, I can start editing and playing with the colors that I have here. But you'll notice that down at the bottom, not only do I have the ability to grab the color wheel and do the same kinds of things on the website, but also at the bottom of the screen, there is the camera button. So when I tap the camera button, that activates the camera on my device. And as I move around the room, as I move around my environment, Cooler will go in and start identifying the colors around me and allow me to pick them. Now, for example, if I kind of like what I'm seeing here, I can stop it just by tapping on the screen. I can drag these around and maybe say, well, I kind of want some of that pink, and maybe I want some of that purple, and I kind of like the gold up there, but I want some of the beige from the wall, and I can get just the colors I need using the new app. Once I'm happy, I can go ahead and snap or freeze that theme. And of course, if it's a picture you've already taken, you can load that picture in as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and tap and name this theme. We're going to call it, let's call it Terry's Office, because that's where I am. And Just go ahead and type that in. Now, at this point, I can make it a public theme if I want to show it or share it with others around me. But I'm just going to go ahead. I can put any tags in it. I'm just going to go ahead and save it. Now, once I've saved it, I still have the ability to go in and tap the share button. I can share it on Twitter. I can email a link to it, or just, of course, cancel out of it. And I can still go in and modify it. I can go in and grab different colors and adjust them ever so slightly. I can grab the hex values of each color. Perhaps I'm working on a website. And I can just continue to go in and play. But the beauty of this is that this color, the minute I saved it, this swatch set, it's synced to the cloud. So if I now head back to the Cooler website and I head over to My Themes, there should be a Terry's Office swatch set. And there it is. So it's gone ahead and added that to the existing ones that I had already captured. Now, better yet, if I head over to the brand new Adobe Illustrator CC and I bring up the Cooler swatch panel, I can go ahead and tell it to refresh, go grab my themes, and there's the one from Terry's Office. So I'm working on this mock-up for a website, and I kind of like the beige that was in the wall there, or the gold that was in the poster on the wall, or the burgundy from the flowers. I can just go ahead and use those in my design. So this is really going to empower designers to work beyond just the colors they can think of and kind of create in the app, to actually capturing what's around you and using it throughout your workflow, throughout your design phases. And this is very cool to be able to do this, not only from a picture that you've captured earlier, but live. If you see something that inspires you, right then and there, go in and capture it and use it, and it's automatically syncing up to the Cooler Cloud or the Adobe Cloud. And what I want to do here is I want to go in and talk about brushes. Now we see these different pattern brushes that we have here, and I just want to show you a new way that we create them in Illustrator CC. So I'm going to go to my brushes panel. I'm just going to select this object and go ahead and drag it in. Now when I drag it in, I get the ability to make it a scatter brush, art brush, or pattern brush. I'm going to go ahead and make it a pattern brush. And it will take all of the objects and kind of basically make a brush out of it. But what's new is how the corners will interact. Normally what I would have to do is kind of design one specifically for a corner. But what I want to do here is not use these blocks. I want it to make one for me, so I can have it make one that is auto-centered based on the shapes that it saw there and convert it for me. Auto between. And I can do for the outer corner, let's do this one, and for the inner corner as well. So for example, the inner corner is this one. I can have it be auto sliced if I choose. So these new brushes will take your vector patterns and allow you to auto-generate the corners of how those patterns will look when you apply them to objects. So I'll click OK. That becomes my new pattern down there at the bottom there. So if I select this object, I should be able to just apply that pattern. We'll make the stroke a little bit less than that so that we can see it a little bit better around the object. So there you are. And it's using either the inner or the outer depending on the way the shape was created. Now, that's great for vectors, but one thing we've never been able to do in Illustrator in the past is have raster brushes, basically brushes made out of images. So I've got this image here. This is actually a bitmapped image. And if we zoom in on it, we'll see that that is all pixel based. There's nothing drawn here. And if I wanted to make a brush out of this in the past, I'd have to either draw it by hand or I'd have to trace it with Illustrator and then remember to hopefully get all the colors just right. Well, now I can take this bitmapped embedded image and drag it right into the brushes panel, and it recognizes it as the ability to create a brush. I can have it be a scatter brush, art brush, or pattern brush. In this case, I want it to be an art brush. So we'll click OK. And the reason I chose an art brush is because it's got that, end on it, that end cap, those leaves that I kind of don't want to be repeated as I draw with that. So I'm going to say that I do want the middle part repeated or stretched or whatever it needs, but just not the ends. So I'm going to do stretch between guides. I'm going to just go ahead and pick up the guide and say, yeah, you can stretch anything between these guides, but don't ever stretch that. So we click OK. That becomes my new brush, which is now selected. I can go ahead and select this object and apply it if I want. I get that effect if I do. Or I can just pick up the brush itself and use my brush tool, and I can draw with it. And I get these organic, cool brushes made out of photographs that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to do as easily. So I think you'll have a lot of fun using bitmapped brushes where you need to in Illustrator and where it makes sense. All right, and as you can see here, this little piece of the road right here, this was actually created to be a brush, to be the road of the map here. So that little tree bark was used as a brush in this area. All right, now let's move on to InDesign. InDesign CC is probably, of all the applications, the one that got the most work under the hood. This application has been actually more than 2 years in the making. This one is a complete rewrite of InDesign from the ground up. As you might remember in, I believe it was CS6 Illustrator, we did the same thing. Illustrator got its rewrite from the ground up, brand new application, 64-bit, all the great new bells and whistles and speed improvements. And the same thing for InDesign. So InDesign got it this time around. So of course it got the new dark UI, just like Photoshop, Illustrator, and the video tools. It also got Retina display support, which was another biggie that people wanted. So now Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign all have Retina display support for Macs that have those nice, bright, new, high density Retina displays. And along with the 64-bit capabilities came some new features, as well as the ability to well, hey, I'm going to do two things. Let's talk about fonts first, and then we'll go in and talk about one more new thing before we head out. So, for example, let's grab some text here. And in the font menu, of course, as you would expect, it tells me what font I just selected. That's what I would expect it to do. And of course, if I pop up the font menu, I would expect to then be able to choose different fonts. Now, you might remember I did grab some fonts earlier in the font menu here, Typekit. So I have Vertigo Pro. That's a font that I downloaded earlier from my Typekit fonts as part of Creative Cloud. So if I head back to InDesign, oops, there we go. Head back to InDesign. I could go in and I could scroll down and I could find Vertigo. I'm sure it's down here in the F's somewhere. There it is, Vertigo Pro script. And I could highlight that font and see what it looks like with my type. So I can scroll through these and kind of get an idea of what those look like. Great. But what if I don't want to always have to scroll down and look for that? Well, you'll notice that I could have typed it in, as we always could before. So if I knew the name of it, I could type it in and have it get to it. But the search is no longer just for typing the name of the font. You can now type other things, other attributes. So for example, maybe I just want a bold font and I don't know which one I want yet. So I can just type in the word bold and it will find every font I have installed with a bold style to it. And I can then arrow through them to see which bold font I like better. And since bold is such a broad category, how about we do heavy? So I don't have as many heavy fonts, and I can go through those and see which ones I like, if I like any of those better. And of course, it's not just bold and heavy. It could be italic. It could be the name of the font. It could be any other attribute that you want to search for. It will look for everything. All the medium fonts, for example. It will find those as well. So searching for fonts is cool. But if I find a font that I want to use, and I like it, I don't want to always have to scroll down this list looking for it. So you'll notice there's stars next to each font. And before I forget, you'll also see little triangles next to the fonts that have multiple styles, which you can now twirl down and twirl up to condense your font menu so it's not as long. But I'm going to go ahead and click the star next to Vertigo because that is a font I kind of want to use on a regular basis. And you'll notice that some of them have dark stars, some of them don't, and that is because the ones that don't aren't my favorites. So now I can just say, show me my favorite fonts. And of my favorites, I can see what that type will look like with my favorites chosen. And of course, I can always uncheck that to get back to all of them. So the font menu has had a huge improvement in this new version of InDesign, and Illustrator also has those same features. So whether you're using InDesign or Illustrator for your font menu choices, you will enjoy the new searching and favorites and all those other cool things that we just saw. Now, I noticed in this design that there is a URL here, and it's kind of a long one. What I'd love to do is, instead of having people type that or having to remember it, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. And what I'd love to do is create a scannable QR code that they can just use their mobile devices and scan and go right to that website. So I'm going to go to this frame. I'm going to go to my object menu, and I'm going to say generate QR code. And when I generate QR code, I can paste in that URL. If I do a web hyperlink, that is, I can paste in that URL, and that will be a scannable web link that they can use. Now, what other choices do we have? We just saw that we have plain text. So this is where if you wanted to scan and have them scan and see a message that pops up, you would type in the text here. You could also have it be a text message where you put in the phone number and the message so that you will get that text message from the person who scanned the code. Same thing for email. You put in the email address that you wanted to go to, the subject, and the message, and you will receive that email from the person who scanned it. And of course, business card. And this is one where you'll get to basically put in all your information so that they will be able to add your contact to their contacts. But I'm going to go back to web hyperlink. I'm going to go to color and make it white. Click OK. And there is my scannable QR code. And again, if I hover over it, it will show me what URL that code is going to or what information that code will display. And it's just that easy to create QR codes. And keep in mind, this is an object like any other object, so it can be styled. I can put a drop shadow on it. I can make it a different color. I can even copy and paste it into other applications like Illustrator. It's just like any other vector object, but InDesign created it for you. And if I ever need to get back to it, I can right click on it. I can say edit QR code and get right back to the URL to make any changes I want. So without me having to delete it and make a new one. So with that, let's head over to Adobe Muse. Now, Muse has been getting updated regularly because Muse has, Muse 1.0 started out as a subscription product, and of course, a part of Creative Cloud membership. So it's been getting updates regularly along the way, and of course, this CC update is no different. It's got new features that have been added to this version. I'm just going to talk about a couple of those new features, one of which is kind of cool. It's for creating animations using a feature called parallax scrolling. Look at that leaf on the left-hand side of the page, this leaf right here. That leaf is being controlled by the user when they scroll. So if I scroll back up, the leaf goes back up. I scroll back down, the leaf comes down. And if I keep going, other leaves are going up and down in different directions, left and right. Based on the scrolling. So that's the parallax scrolling feature. Being able to control objects on the screen based on where the user scrolls and what direction they move in, how fast they move, so forth and so on. So let's take a look at parallax scrolling in Muse CC. So I'm going to head over to this particular page that I have an object. I have one of the leaves that I have not enabled parallax scrolling for. So it's just an object placed on the page. And where you find this feature is you select the object that you want to apply this to, and it could be any object. So we go to Effects, and then we go in and we simply go to the last tab, which is brand new, called Scroll Motion, and we enable Scroll Motion. Now, of course, I had enabled this once before, so it automatically picked up my previous position. But this position, I'll get to in a moment, is where the scrolling starts. In other words, when the user scrolls down to a certain spot, this is where you're telling it that the action will begin. And you can either have it begin before it gets to the key position, or after it gets to the key position, or both in my case.
Now, what's the numbers here? The numbers are speed. So it's saying, incline this with a value of 2 moving down and a value of 0 moving across. So in other words, this object is just moving straight down. Then after the key position, it continues to move down at a rate of 2, but then it starts to slide over at a rate of 1. And you may only see it slide over ever so slightly because you're telling it to go kind of slow. So you may not see it scroll too far to the right before you've scrolled past it. So that's what you're controlling here is up, down, left, right for both the before the key position or after the key position. Now, what's the key position? This is the number of pixels on the page down. So you have a vertical ruler here. This one is set to 483, so that's why the bar is up above where we can see it because we're not scrolled up that high. But that's where you're telling it the scrolling will begin. Now, I never really like setting the number. I like doing it this way, where you can actually just put in any number, and then you can click on that point, and you can control it by dragging where you want that scroll to start. And it will give you a readout. So I can say start at 483 or, thereabouts, but it's up to me. So now I can visually see that when the user scrolls down to that spot, that's where the action begins. So now let's preview this page in browser and test it out. And now that I've got the HTML rendered and viewing it in my default browser, which is Chrome, as soon as I scroll down, there is my leaf. It starts to come down, and again, it's going to start to veer off to the right. And again, we'll only see, I can see it down there at the bottom. It's starting to veer off to the right. Now, of course, it's also going to be dependent on the resolution of the person's display. I'm working at a lower resolution for the video, so I don't have as much height as a typical user would have to be able to see this. But you can see that the parallax scrolling is being controlled by that object. So it's scrolled off and to the right and it's gone. And there's another one scrolling up slowly. And there's one shooting across. So if we go back, let's look at that object just to kind of compare and contrast the settings. So if we scroll down and we go to this object and we go to the effects panel, we can see what it's set to. So there's the key position. It was set to be much lower on the page. And it's scrolling down very slowly at 0.5, but it's going much faster across at 2 versus 1 or 0. And the same thing for after the key. It continues to scroll at 2 to the right and down slower. So that's what you're controlling is what direction it's going to go in and how fast it's going to go in that direction and where the scrolling will start. So that's parallax scrolling, a brand new feature in the new Muse CC, which is for Creative Cloud.
All right, next, one more thing about Muse, and that is one of the other big things that people have asked for is the ability to have clients or your customer do editing. In other words, you design the site, but you want the client to actually do the edits, simple edits like text and maybe replace photos. So Muse with this version will have in-browser editing. So the customer, again, doesn't have to know anything about Creative Cloud, doesn't have to be a member, doesn't have to have Muse, but you will, once you publish the site, now this particular feature is only available if you host the site with your Creative Cloud account. So if you publish it to Business Catalyst using the publish feature, you will then be able to have that user be able to make changes. And of course, the new feature is right here, add in-browser editing user. In other words, once I've published it, I can say add a user to be able to publish this, and yes, it can be multiple users. So now once that's done, what that will look like, here I'll head over to the browser, and I think I've got it set up here. Actually, I don't. I've got it set up in the other browser. So I added one of my other email addresses as the person that can make changes. So I'm logged in as the other Terry White. I'm logged in as the other person. And it's kind of giving me a walkthrough. I'm looking at the page. Again, I don't have to have Muse. I don't know what Muse is, but my web designer told me I can make changes. So if I scroll down, and we go here and I say that I want to make a change to this text. I just hover over whatever it is I want to change, click the little pencil, and I can say it says read the latest, and I can say read this last, and I can click update, and that will make the change. So users will be able to edit their own content on their site. If I want to replace that photo, I can say edit. I can grab a different photo that's already on my site, or I could just grab one from my computer. So basic editing for people that are going to be the clients of your Muse sites, but not actually own Muse or not be Creative Cloud members. And this will also save you from having to do the mundane changes that people tend to want to do that don't really require your time. And if they need site design changes, then that's where you jump in. But for just simple changes, text changes, image changes, they'll be able to do it themselves. So that is in-browser editing. And as you can see, even when I replaced that image, the parallax scrolling still worked. Now, once I publish the changes, you as the designer can still say no. No, I will not accept those changes. So you still have complete control over this editing process. Thank you, everyone.